Hello everybody, thanks for joining us today. My name is Howie. I'm one of the developers here at PTS. Today I get the privilege of showing you guys the latest version of TracerPlus, TracerPlus 9.0. I'll kind of be giving you a live demonstration of the product, talk about the new features. As usual, there'll be a question and answer period at the end of the webinar, so feel free to, as I go through any of the features here, ask any questions that you may have using the questions panel in the GoToMeeting toolbar. Before I get started, I'd just like to mention some of the upcoming and latest events here at PTS. The first here is we have a new Clearstream RFID forum at forum.clearstreamrfid.com. We'd just like to mention anybody that is looking at fixed RFID, maybe have questions about tags, RFID readers, or anything really RFID focused, please join up to our forum at clearstreamrfid.com. We'd be happy to see any questions that you guys may have and feedback as well for the products and any of the webinars that we may do. We also have a number of new feature-focused training videos that we've put up on YouTube. We've kind of tried to grow this feature a bit on our YouTube channel. So the first one there, we actually just posted a form logic one. There's a new one for TracerPlus Connect registration process if you want to install on multiple PCs. And there's a whole bunch of other feature-focused videos there. So if you have a feature that you'd like to take a look at in a small snippet rather than a large webinar-type training video, take a look at our feature-focused training videos. And we'll be growing those on the YouTube channel there. And if you guys have any questions or any requests for those training videos, please send them on over to us. And then, obviously, for this webinar here today, TracerPlus 9.0 is available now and is up on our website. So you can go to tracerplus.com and download the application in trial mode, or if you have a support contract in place, you can go ahead and upgrade to the latest version by downloading it from our website. And as usual, if you guys would like to trial any of the features that I talked about here today, TracerPlus is, as always, offered as a free trial on our website. So just go to the trial section of tracerplus.com. You can download the latest software. It'll run side by side with any older installations that you may have. So if you have TracerPlus 8 or prior, you can install TracerPlus 9.0 side by side and test out all of the features that I show you here today. And you can take a look at everything new within TracerPlus 9.0. Okay. So with that, I'd just like to talk a little bit about TracerPlus before 9.0 and kind of then focus on what 9.0 brings to the TracerPlus environment. TracerPlus has always been an easy-to-use form generation tool. You've always had a non-programming type interface where you can drag and drop custom forms. You can design as many as you'd like, or really up to 32, and deploy them to the handhelds. And it was really a very easy-to-use, pretty powerful form design tool. But in some cases, to get some special functionality out of TracerPlus, you sometimes had to be very, very familiar with the different features. You had to use what we always called some tricks in TracerPlus to get it to behave the way that you'd like. And now with TracerPlus 9.0, we've introduced the biggest feature, which is a flexible, easy-to-use form logic. So we have a new form logic window that you can open up within the form designer of TracerPlus and build in all the flexibility that you need to in that form, and you can do it based on different conditions. You can completely control the form and flow of your form. So it allows you to dynamically change the form based on user input, dynamically change the flow of the form based on user input, the look and feel of the form. Everything about that form you can control using this form logic. And it's an easy-to-use interface where you can kind of customize all of these different attributes of the form to really get a much more customized feel out of your TracerPlus applications. So you don't have to use those kind of tricks to force the user around on the forms that you've generated. You can build it into this form logic script and build different actions onto your form. So I'll be going into that form in just a bit here to kind of show you all the different features available there within TracerPlus 9.0, but I will be bringing that up in just a bit. Some of the other new features for TracerPlus 9.0, the biggest one, of course, is form logic. But we also have date and time calculations, so you can now use 2 date and time fields on your form to either add days together, so you can calculate maybe an expiration date or some date in the future, and you can also subtract 2 dates from each other to get an elapsed time. So a lot of people have been requesting that for check-in, check-out types applications. That's one of the new bigger features available within TracerPlus 9.0. There's also an updated UI for both TracerPlus Connect and the Android devices. We spent a lot of time trying to make the Android TracerPlus scale better to a lot of the different Android devices. So you have a lot of different tablets and mobile devices available. Your forms will deploy and scale much better now in TracerPlus 9.0. So you don't have to necessarily redesign the entire form layout for a tablet as opposed to a smaller mobile device. Those will scale automatically for you. We also have a new feature for drop-down data values. This allows you to store the values that you select from a drop-down as a code value or something that the user may not see, but they're actually selecting from a human-readable value. So that's, a lot of people wanted that, so if you wanted to store maybe a condition as a code at the database level, but display it to the user as good, bad, and poor, you can now save it as maybe 1, 2, or 3 or something to be compatible with the database that you may have when you sync that data over. Another cool feature that we added is automatically building desktop forms from back-end data sources. This includes Microsoft Excel, ODBC data sources, as well as text files. So if you already had something available, like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet that had a bunch of, maybe a row for headers for all of the fields, and you wanted to quickly develop a mobile application based on that row in your Excel file, you could go ahead and just use the file import option in our field settings to pull that row in as all of your fields in your TracerPlus Desktop project. Or if you had maybe an Oracle table and you'd like to generate a mobile application for that Oracle table or Microsoft Access table, you can go ahead and select that table, and the fields will be automatically built within TracerPlus Desktop based on that table's definition in your ODBC data source. So it's a really easy way of building mobile forms, or at least getting the starting point. So you don't have to add all of the fields that you may already have in that back-end data source. You could just build them automatically from TracerPlus Desktop and that import feature. And as I mentioned before, we have improved form scaling for Android devices. This is a powerful new feature in that you can really design those Android forms once, and they will scale to the different handhelds that you deploy them to. So even if you were to deploy or take one of our solutions from the Solution Center that was originally designed for a Windows Mobile or Windows CE device, and it had that very small resolution because of the lower resolution of some of those devices, when you deploy that to a tablet, an Android tablet or just an Android smartphone with a high resolution, it will automatically scale the form to fit that. It'll kind of almost zoom in on the form and scale it and stretch it to the size of the device. So that's a very helpful feature when you're deploying for different screen sizes, and also just if you wanted to take one of our pre-built solutions or maybe something you had set up for Windows Mobile or CE in the past, you can automatically deploy them to an Android device and have those scale for you. Okay. So with that, I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint and actually over to TracerPlus Desktop 9.0. Okay, so here's TracerPlus Desktop. This is version 9.0 in the home screen. One thing I would just like to quickly mention again is you can download everything here from our TracerPlus.com website. Just click on the free trial button up at the top, and you can download and install the latest versions here as a free trial so you can try everything today. We also have the Android installer on here, and you can use Google Play to install the Android client as well. Okay, so here is TracerPlus Desktop 9.0. I have the application set up here, and I also have a Windows mobile device connected to my PC here that I'm going to go ahead and deploy. So I'm sharing the screen of this Windows mobile device on my PC. You can see it's currently in a default state, so it just has this one session here with the 10 fields available. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually design a very simple form to start to show you the form logic features of TracerPlus 9.0. So what I thought I'd do as a starting point is go ahead and start a new project. And I'm going to call this project, I'll go to the session, I'm going to call this project a color picker. And what I want to do is allow the user to select from a list of colors, and that'll drive the color of the field immediately below it. Now this is just a very simple setup for the form logic, but it'll show you how you can dynamically customize the form based on a user selection. So what I'm going to do is just have two fields on my form. The first one will be color, and the second one I'll call display. Okay, so what I want to do is make color a drop-down that the user selects from, and I'll just put 3 values here, red, green, and blue. So now what will happen is the user will select red, green, or blue, and it's going to drive the color of this display field immediately below it. So I'll jump over to the form designer. I'm going to reset my form based on those two fields there. Now what I want to do again is the user is going to select this color drop-down, red, green, or blue, and it's going to change the color of the text field immediately below it. So first thing I'm going to do is turn on this hint of the control IDs here. That's very useful for this form logic, and you'll see why in just a second. Now I'm going to open up, using this button here, I'm going to open up the form logic editor. Now this form logic editor is where you're defining a script, we've been calling it, a script of all of the logic and actions that happen on your form. So based on user entry, you're going to drive certain things on the form. You're going to drive colors, you're going to just drive read-only flags, you're going to drive plain sounds on the form or showing messages to really control the flow and the layout of the form as the user is entering data. So the first thing I need to do is add a new logic item to this list. And you can see here it's broken out into three things. There's an event in this first section here. There's an if/condition in the second section here. And finally, there's an action that occurs if the condition is met, along with an else parameter here. So you can do an if or else on the form action. So what I want to do is, based on the user input of the first field here, field 5, you can see from the form, I want to say when field 5 changed, so field value changed is my event on field 5. Okay, so again, that means when this drop-down changes value, that's the event that's triggering this logic item. In the if/condition area here, I want to go ahead and add in a condition that says if control 5 equals red, I want to go ahead and pick now an action of set back color of this next field here, which is 7. So I'm going to pick 7 from this list. And now the action value that I want to select is actually the color that I want to drive for that field. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead with red. I'm going to turn off the else condition. So basically this means on field value of field 5 value changing, if it equals red, set the back color of 7, which is our display, red. So the next thing I want to do is go ahead and hit duplicate, and I'm going to do the other colors that we have available here. So I'm going to go ahead, here's red, I'll add blue and just change the color to blue. I'm going to duplicate this again for the final color that I had in that list, which was green. And I will pick a new color here for green. Do a nice bright one. Okay, so now this basically will drive the color of that form. Now the last thing I really want to do here is I actually want to reset this control to be white when the user presses submit. So when they're done filling out the form, they save their data. I kind of want to reset the form to its default state. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more item to this, and this one is going to be a form initialize event. The form initialize event, I'll get rid of our if condition. All I really want to do is always force the back color of 7 back to white. So I'll go ahead and pick white here. Okay, so you can see here, anytime the field value changes to 5, I'm driving the color of this this 7 control here. And upon a form initialize event, which is basically when the form just starts up or after a user clicks the submit button, it's going to force it back to white. Okay, so that's a very simple setup there. I'm going to go ahead and deploy this project so you can see it in action. And once this is done, I'll describe some of the other events and actions you have there. Okay, so I deployed the form. It closed down TracerPlus. It reopened it. As usual, now you can see the project contains the one form that I have, which is this color picker form. I'll go ahead and open up the color picker. It looks like what we have designed in our form designer here. The drop-down has the values for the colors. And you can see based on the user selection here, it changes the color of this form based on our form logic settings there. And if I were to hit submit, it'll save that record that they selected, and it restores the form back to that default state because of that form initialize function. Okay, so that's a very simple setup, but you can see how you can customize the form based on the user entry on the form here. So at this point, I'm going to jump back over to that form logic window because I want to show you some of the additional events and actions that you have available to you to really customize the entire layout of the TracerPlus form. So let me close this. Go back to the form designer. Okay, so in this case here, I just used the field value change, and I used the form initialize event. You can see I added if conditions here, and I also did the background colors. It's really the only event that I selected. The other events that you have available here, You can do things like an on-focus event. You can do a lost focus in a field. So maybe when the user taps out of the field, you'd like to do something on the form. You can do an after-scan event. Now, the after-scan event is kind of a standard feature of TracerPlus. That's like if you scan a barcode into a field or an RFID tag, or even if the user presses enter in a field. That event is an after-scan event. Like you saw before, there's the field value changed. That just occurs anytime the value in that field currently changes. There's an event of form initialize. So that allows you to reset the form to the default state when you submit the record. So you really would want a bunch of those form initialize events to drive the form back to its initial state. There's an on-click event. So you can tie these logic items to buttons that may be clicked on the form. So you can drive flow of the form as well as the look and feel of the form based on button clicks as well. You can do an event of validation failed or successful. So if a field fails validation, you can do something on the form. You could pop up a message maybe that says, value needs review, or drive the user to some certain field to make sure that that validation, or to have the user verify why that field validation failed. You can trigger an event based on a calc refreshed. Calc refresh could be something like maybe a GPS coordinate gets refreshed. Maybe you then want to drive something on the form. You can do a lookup refresh. So if you refresh a lookup with a new item on your form, so you scan a part number, it looks up the description for that part number. Upon that description being displayed on the form, you can drive some action on the form. You can make that value bold or drive focus to something on the form. You can use the onSubmit event. So when the user presses submit, you can do certain things on the form before the data is actually submitted. Maybe entering a field value into another field, things like that. So you can change the values and logic of the form upon the user pressing the submit button. And then the last three here have to do with kind of TracerPlus syncing events. So upon a sync being complete, you can do something on the form. Once the sync's complete, maybe bring them to another tab so that they have to do something. And then the last two are the live mode connected or disconnected. Feature a lot of people requested for previous versions of TracerPlus Connect is if the user was connected in live mode to TracerPlus Connect, they wanted a better way of showing them that they were either connected to the server or not. You can, based on these events, do things like change the background color of the form to be red if you're disconnected from the server or something like that. But you can see you have a wide-ranging number of events that can happen on the form that can then drive other actions on that within your TracerPlus session here. In the actions, you saw you had set back color. We also have a click action. That actually allows you to define a button on your form to be clicked. So imagine having like a print button. You can, based on user input, then force a button to be clicked, like to cause a print, or maybe sending an email or something like that. You can execute custom SQL. This is a very powerful feature in 9.0. You can just, based on the field values that I have on here, you can execute custom SQL against your local database so that you can submit data in any way that you need to, or even select data from the database as you need to. So maybe on clicking of a button, it does some custom query that you write to pull up information about that, maybe that item that you just, when you clicked that button, something like that. You can do a go-to control or a go-to page. That allows you to control the flow of where the cursor is going based on your events. So on field value changing, if control ID was 5, maybe you want to say, okay, go to control, some other control on the form. But if it's blue, you want to go to a different control. So you're driving how that user is entering data on the form. There's a play sound action. You can push over a WAV file onto the device and it'll play a sound. So if something happens on the form, you want the user not to have to look at the form and see it, you can go ahead and play the sound. You can refresh fields. So maybe something happens on the form, you want to refresh GPS coordinates, you can do that. You can do the set back color. You can set font. You can set the for color and set position. So you have a lot of control over where the controls are all located on the form. And I'll show you a fully configured one after this. But you can control what the form looks like using some of these functions here. You can set read only, so you can turn fields on and off as whether or not they're required for the user to fill out. You can set tabs visible. You can set validation enabled or not. This is neat because maybe with certain items you don't want to validate a field, and with certain, other items that you may be performing an inspection on, you do want to validate those fields. You can turn the validation on and off. You can set value into a field, set a field visible, as well as show a message. You can pop up a message, and you can also fire a validation on a field. So there's a lot of actions that you can trigger on the form based on the events that happen and whether or not their conditions are met. So you have complete control now over what the form looks like and how the user is entering that data. Okay. So with that, I'd like to jump over to actually a fully configured one, so you can see a couple more of the form logic items that are available to you, or how they would be set up in a fully configured form. So I'm going to jump over to this TP9 webinar form that I have developed. So here, this form, you can see it's an inspection form, and it's set up so that the user's selecting an item type, and they have a number of different fields that they need to inspect based on the item type that they select. Now, the thing about this form is not all of these items on this form are required for each item type. So using form logic, you can make certain fields required based on the item type selection. So let me jump over to the form designer. So here's my item inspection form. Up on the top, there's a drop-down for the item type. When the user selects this, what actually happens is, based on the type that's selected, it takes these fields over on the right-hand side and moves them into position so that the user can perform the correct inspection based on that item type. So here you can see the first one is a water pump inspection, the second one is the boiler inspection, and the last one is the extinguisher inspection. And they all have different fields of information that you'd like to inspect, but they're only shown to the user based on the input that they select from the item type. So let me actually open up the form logic for this so you can kind of see there's a lot of items in this project. So now based on the form initialize, it sets, from this list here, it sets a bunch of controls to not visible, you can see. So it's kind of hiding the controls up front. And then down below, it has a bunch of after scan events that basically say if the user selects a boiler, or if the user selects a water pump, or maybe it selects a fire extinguisher, it's controlling the look and feel of this form based on all of these items on the form. So you can see it's doing set positions, which is moving fields into position of the form so that the user can enter those inspection items for that particular item type. It's also setting certain fields visible so that you can see them. And the last thing here is it's also setting some values on the form to the different fields that you're supposed to be inspecting. So here you can see it's setting the value of 100. If I take a look at what that is, it's this label over here on the left-hand side, and it's setting that label to say heating element. And then it's setting 102 to say valve leak, which is a checkbox, and also a setting value of 104, which is the last label here, to visual check. If you were to select a water pump, it switches those to different values. There's a visual check, water pressure, and check valve. So you're changing the look of the form and all the attributes of the form based on what the user's selecting from these items here. So let me go ahead and actually deploy this so you can kind of see this one in action. We go through the normal deployment process. The handheld will close down TracerPlus, automatically open up TracerPlus when it's complete. Now instead of that color picker form, I have my new inspection form. And if I go ahead and open this up, you can see it doesn't quite look like what I had on the form here, in that some of those fields are not visible. So you can see there's a bunch of form initialize stuff going on here where it's creating this form to look like this upon the first opening of this inspection. If I go ahead and pick one of the types, it then changes the form because this type now is boiler. If I switch it again to something else like water pump, it changes the form based on the user selecting the water pump here. And if you were to go ahead and save this form, it actually does a condition, a validation check there. So I will go ahead, I forgot some of these things that were built into this. So if you go ahead and save the form and validation fails for the condition field, it actually changed the color of the condition fields here to notify the user to say, hey, you're supposed to enter this condition, and this is the field that's wrong. So I'll go ahead and do is pick a condition. I can go ahead and hit pick new there and go ahead and save the inspection. It then, based on those form initialize actions, it resets the form to this state. If I go ahead and pick another one, I'm going to click Save Inspection here again. It's going to say please select condition. And I'm going to go ahead and pick poor in this case. Poor for the condition shows a checkbox of needs repair. So at that point, you could have the user select whether or not it's poor enough that you actually have to replace this particular item. But that's only visible, again, if you select poor from the condition dropdown. So you can see from the form logic here, you have a lot of control over what this form looks like. And it's something that in the past, you may have to drive users to different tabs on the form in, say, version 8.0 and prior. But now with 9.0, just through this scripting kind of engine for the form logic, you can customize what the form looks like based on any real entry that the user has done on the form, and you can kind of control all of that. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to show you today in form logic. We will be posting some of these applications to the Solution Center with the form logic available. There's actually a ping pong scoring application up there now on our Solution Center, which is a pretty neat one. It uses all form logic to keep track of ping pong scores. But it was really just a way to show some of the features of the form logic. So if you guys would like to take a look at that, it is available now on our Solution Center. Just to kind of touch on some of the other features of 9.0, if I go to the Field Settings tab here, this is where you're adding all of the fields of information that you'd like to enter for your project. Here's the import button if you have an ODBC database table or Excel spreadsheet that you'd like to automatically build this list with. You can go ahead and select the import button there to pull in that field list. Also, if you go ahead to a calculated field, let me add one here. You can go ahead and use the Calculated Options tab to add or subtract date time fields. So it's set up the same way that any other formula is configured in TracerPlus. You're like adding two fields together. In this case, if you just pick two date time fields that you may already have on your form, it'll do an elapsed time or it will add time to that date field. So you can do the date time math. The Calculated Options also supports a new trigger field. A lot of people had been requesting this because they don't want the calc fields to refresh all the time. So we added a trigger field option here so that you can make it the calculation only refresh based on a trigger field. So maybe, excuse me, maybe when the trigger field changes value, you would then refresh the calc field, not in any other situation on the form. Okay. So I think that's kind of all I wanted to show you for TracerPlus 9.0. Again, I mean, the biggest feature here is this form logic, and we're really looking for feedback from our users as to how and what they can design using this form logic window. You know, what you guys see in its flexibility and how easy it is to set up these different kind of dynamic forms within TracerPlus. So with that, I'm going to jump back over to the PowerPoint. Bring up our contact information. Okay, so first off, I appreciate everyone joining us today on the webinar. We're excited about the release of TracerPlus 9.0. We really want as many people to take a look at TracerPlus 9.0, just even to build into their current projects, because we really think the flexibility that you now have with your TracerPlus forms really adds a new level of customization to the applications that we didn't have available previously. So we really encourage all of you to go to our website and download the trial. Again, you can install it side by side with your older TracerPlus installations and download and trial the software. If you do run into any questions or if you have any feedback as you're doing that, here is our contact information, so please reach out to us with any of those questions because we're looking for the feedback on all of these new features. So we'd be glad to get that from all you guys as you're playing with the software. So with that, again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. All right, bye-bye.